So, like, form and emptiness. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. How do you talk about that, anyways? Like, form is just how you're perceiving something, but in a way that's sort of from a mental overlay. And emptiness is just seeing it without the overlay. Like, the form would just be saying, this is a mask. It has like a purpose to, you know, stop infections and stuff. Well, it won't really stop, but it'll help prevent things. But the empty view is it's just what it is. It doesn't have an actual function or anything. It's just what it is before the labels and ideas of what it is. And in the most simple way, that's form and emptiness. And there's so many ways to talk. There are so many ways to talk about form and emptiness. But you can talk about your romantic relationships in the same way. That form is, or form, excuse my grammar, but form would be sort of the boundaries of your relationship. You can say form is an open relationship or a monogamous relationship. Form would be sort of the way you would discuss your relationship with someone, whether if it's open or not. And the empty view is, yeah, there is no actual relationship. It's just what's happening. And yet, if you neglect the form, someone's gonna end up getting hurt. Because if the form is you have a monogamous relationship and you're kind of drunk on the empty view that there is no meaning, you can use that as an excuse to start cheating. And then your partner will be devastated and you're probably going to get dumped. I would hope you do. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? My opinion aside, sure, on an absolute level, you can do whatever you want. You're not tied down by form. And when you do get more accustomed to this more absolute way of there is nothing, yeah, you can. And yet, that kind of emptiness is, while true, is very incomplete. Because that kind of emptiness is, it's more of a conceptual emptiness. It's an emptiness that has more to do with, I don't really know how to say this directly, but it's like an emptiness that's opposed to form, as in you can do whatever you want because there's no meaning. And yet there's an emptiness that's empty of emptiness. It's like empty of both form and emptiness, and yet it includes both form and emptiness. There's a type of emptiness that it's almost empty of emptiness, or rather, you're empty in a way that doesn't reference like an idea of emptiness. And when you're empty of even emptiness, it's like it's an emptiness that includes emptiness and form. And pretty viscerally, you'll kind of feel like you can do anything. And yet at the same time, on a visceral level, there's a respect for form, that there isn't a neglecting of form, but you have both the freedom of emptiness and you can abide by the rules of form. Almost as if the closest thing would be authenticity, since you're free to do whatever, and yet you use form as a way to communicate your boundaries. If you were a monogamous person, if that's something that resonates with you, while you can do whatever, and in a view that just wants to throw everything away, you don't have to throw anything away. You can just have your boundaries of, I just want this to be between me and this other person. And there's this empty that allows this setting of boundaries, this allowance of form. Like, you can have a partner that wants to be open, but if you check back in your experience viscerally, and it's not something that really resonates with you. You can see the empty nature of things, that they have what's true for them, and you also have what's true for you. And yet, even though it's different, they're not opposing views. It's just different. Because if you're empty as a way to go against form, that's a duality you're making. But when you're empty enough that even when things are opposing, they're no longer actually in conflict. It's a type of empty that's just empty of emptiness. Because when you think about emptiness and form, well, I kind of gave away the answer there, but you're thinking of form and emptiness because you're still conceptualizing what is empty or what is form. If you conceptualize emptiness, it's all just stuck in your head. Even when you conceptualize form, it's all in your head. I'm really trying to point to that thing that's before before things become concepts. That's where things are really empty, because there's not like a framework, but it's not opposed to using frameworks to try to communicate what's authentic. You can look at it as having a job. That's form. Like your position, your pay, your duties, those are all how you communicate to other people what you want or what you're supposed to do. But really, those are all just mental constructions or the form of your job. And in the empty view, you can be like, yeah, you don't need a job. You don't even have to want a job. And yet, you can still take on a job. You don't even need to have a reason. Like, you can play with form while not being caught up in form. Like the expression in the world, but not of the world. You can still take on a mental identity and use it as a way to communicate to other people, because it's just kind of a normal convention. And yet, you don't have to believe it, like, at all. Yet, it has its practicality, so you use it. even if you know it's not real. Like, we're playing pretend, and now we know we're playing pretend. And it's great when you meet someone who also knows we're playing pretend, because it lacks the heaviness. Because when you think all this form or like quote unquote pretend stuff, when you take it as real, it can really, it's a heavy burden to carry. Yeah. Yeah. So really, so emptiness is form, form is emptiness. So really, that absolute view that there is just emptiness, there's just what is, isn't actually any different from form, our conceptualizations, our boundaries, the way we communicate, the rules we set. They aren't actually two different things. And yet, you can't really separate them. Because if you try to, you're just getting stuck on one side, even getting stuck in this transcendent absolute nothingness. Well, you're gonna have to interact with people who are kind of stuck in form. And if you only try to talk absolutely, you're just gonna get in one ear and out the other. You're not gonna be effective at communicating. And if you're if you just abide in this nothingness, you're very likely gonna cross other people's boundaries, because if you don't respect form, it, it can be very easy to just overstep other people's boundaries as just, it's not real, so why not? But yeah, but that's an idea of emptiness. When you're really empty, there really is no emptiness or form. It's just really what's direct, like what's here. Whether if it's trying to communicate absolutely or relatively or a mixture of both. There comes a point when you get empty enough where it just doesn't matter if you're speaking absolutely or relatively, whether it's about work or a job or your relationship or the emptiness of all things. You gotta empty out of emptiness. Although it can be useful to be able to distinguish form and emptiness, and then you empty out of both of them in a way that there's form and emptiness, but no longer as a concept. It feels more whole when you can actually embody form, but in an empty way, as in you're playing the you're playing your part or your identity while not believing in it, and just there's a lightness to not taking it so seriously. You really have to get out of your head to really be empty. Because if emptiness is just another idea, you're still carrying something with you. As in, people should only see the absolute view, or people should only see the empty nature of things. But that's just more shoulds. And if you want to really be empty, you're going to have to drop the shoulds.